Right. Okay. So, exploring the 5 steps, all about navigating the messiness of change, embracing this change. Another door opens is obviously about what to do when a door closes, but I actually think that it's more about just change in general. How do we do change better? I've been talking to organizations about how do we use the framework to lead change better? How do we use the framework to think about everyday change? So, actually, would love your thoughts on that as we go along through this experience of what comes up for you, because it's actually a really interesting framework just to think about broader change, not just when life comes along and closes a door. So, who am I? Eleanor Tweddle. Why do I do this? Obviously, we're talking about the book, Another Door Opens, but this has been a long journey to get here. I've been a change and communications consultant for the last maybe 10 years. After being made redundant, I was in-house and I did comms from all sorts of different brands and then got made redundant, that old story, and then started the consultancy all around change and communications, going into organizations, helping them to navigate change with storytelling or communications programs or training interventions that help people embed change. So that's where it kind of started. Then I evolved into the coaching space, into a bit more of a facilitation space, which is more what I do now, which is around going into organizations and holding space for people to talk about change, but also writing and this curious mind. And if you read in the book, you might come across that I go into all different spaces because I want change to feel fresh, get into perspectives that maybe we wouldn't before. It's an opportunity to see things differently. So writing is really my freedom to explore all of that. Right, that's enough about me. Oh, nearly forgot my my first book, which you might have come across, is where it all started in terms of writing, which is this exploration on redundancy, very specifically. And the Penguin deal was all around why losing your job could be the best thing that happened to you. And that's what got me thinking about change as a positive experience. So this second book is more about everyday change, wider change, not just losing your job, but how can we just have a better relationship with change? So that is how we are all here today. Right, the readathon. So this is about unruffling thoughts. If you've worked with me before, you'll know that I talk about that a lot, and it's in the book. That sometimes we just need stirring. It's not necessarily training, it doesn't give you an answer. It stirs your thoughts. It maybe give you some ideas that are not formed, that are kind of come to you and you think, well, I'm not quite sure what that is, and it's okay. So sometimes it's things that resonate or they kind of make give you a bit of an energy boost, and that's curious, but again, doesn't mean that you have to have action around it. Sometimes there is that moment of, I call it the moment of oh, where you're like, ooh, that means something. And I read loads of books, loads and loads of books, and I get my highlighter out. And when I have that moment of, oh, interesting, I either take a picture of it or I highlight it or scribble it down on a piece of paper and or a notebook and I really sit with it and think, oh, why did that grab my attention? So really interested in moments that maybe stood out for you, those moments of, oh. That's really what we're all about, trying to find these insights, takeaways, little things to think about. So can't emphasize enough, not about, oh, these are the actions I need to take, just having this curious mind as we walk through. So I want you to feel like it's a safe space. As I said, I'm trying to create this nice safe space for us to explore. We can explore without judgment. So it's okay to say things out loud and then go, oh, I don't know if I mean this. I don't know. It's not a fully formed idea. We hold the space with no judgment. Respect each other's time and space, and we can create energy. So encourage each other. Love us over the next couple of weeks to really help each other to make moves, maybe get a bit uncomfortable, and be a nice supporting group to move through change. Maybe it is a place where ideas emerge and form. And again, by the end of the couple of weeks, who knows where we'll be, but it's just about creating that space for each other. So, the 5 steps. So the 5 steps are pause, mess, play, try, and restart. Today, we're going to look at pause. Great change starts with stopping, creating that moment to just pause and take a step back. And so often we don't do it. So often we get into the busy mode, and maybe when you were reading this chapter, how did it feel to think about pause? Some people have told me that they kind of wanted to get through it, which was really interesting, and then they realized and they took a step back. Some people said they actually had to stop after pause because they realized they needed to put the book down and really lean into it. So this is all about exploring our relationship with pause. And the idea that we're kind of sitting with is that when we pause, a different kind of intelligence comes online. So when we create time to stop, we can then access something very different. And it's really powerful. So it's all about pressing this pause button, trying to be still, bringing in acknowledgement, creating this time to think, looking after ourselves, and then letting go. And depending on where you've got to in reading the book, it'd be really interesting in your relationship with some of these topics. Sometimes they're really hard, sometimes you find them really easy. The idea is that we have to have a better relationship with pausing. I think some of this work with the National Institute of Health is really interesting about resting states. They're not idle states. So sometimes we think that pause is kind of like a bad thing to do, that we have to keep moving. But actually, it's part of us being productive. It's part of us actually helping ourselves to get to a space that we want to get to. So the 5 chapters, the 5 parts in pause are all about a different relationship with pausing. They're about acknowledging change, creating space to think, looking after ourselves, and letting go. They're the 5 headings. Really interested in what comes up when you go through these. If you've got some little nuggets, if you've got some wisdom, some things might have meant more to you than others. So the first place we start really is, what does good pausing look like for you? It's this kind of activation of this deeper wisdom, which really helps us to think about pausing not just now, but actually in everyday life. Pause before we act. Pause before something comes at us and we decide what to do next. Pause in a moment when we're busy, or these big moments of pause that come to us. Really loved this book, Do Pause by Robert Poynton, and I started the chapter of pause with his quote: "Radical serendipities don't happen when you're head down, rushing to a predetermined destination. The opportunities might be there, but chances are you won't see or notice them. Even if you do, you're likely to dismiss them as impossible while you speed along the path you've planned. And sometimes actually not even planned. You're just on default mode, on pilot mode, and we're rushing, but where are we rushing to?" So I really loved that concept. So in our busy lives, we often don't make space to pause. What do you think about when you think about pausing? One of the things I added to the book was this little model, which just kind of helps you to play with the idea that there's different types of pausing in our life. Sometimes it is about doing. It's not all about nothing. Sometimes it's about being really intentional. Sometimes it's about being fluid and going with the flow. So the graph in the book, and if you've got to it, maybe started to get you to think about pause in a different way. Sometimes we need just to understand, well, what do I need to do today? What do I want? What do I need? Is it a rest? Is it time away? Maybe it's a distraction. Is it time to think? So this was all about changing our relationship with pause and understanding that it comes in all sorts of different forms. Another book which really helped me in my pause and have a different relationship with pause is Silence by Erling Kaj. Really great book, all about his exploring. A great quote, the world's secrets are hidden inside silence. I like that because sometimes we fear pausing and we get doing, and we start doing because we're scared about what the silence might bring in this relationship. Like, oh, if I just stay still, what happens? Would love to be, love to know your sort of relationship with silence. Of course, pause isn't all about silence, but there's an element to it. In that kind of moment of pause, whether it's silence or it's a different way that you pause and you help yourself think, it's a moment where we acknowledge what this change is to us because actually, change arrives to us in all different ways. And change is coming at us every single day. Some of it we grab, some of it we don't. So it's good to sit with that, like, what change came to me today? How did it arrive on my doorstep? How did I acknowledge it? Because really, we've got big change and little change coming at us all the time. I mean, just think of all this. Go through this, and I think there's about 15 different types of change that I include in the book to get you really thinking about actually, maybe I'm quite good at change. I do this every day. Whether it's like coming to terms with I'm getting old, or there's something going on in our lives as simple as like, oh, the route to work has changed. These micro changes and macro changes. We are kind of in a change state all the time. So it's not that we can't do change, it's the part where we acknowledge what is this going to mean for me? I'm going to make this mean something. And sometimes we go, okay, I'm going to make it absolute drama. And sometimes we go, I'm going to make it nothing and move on. Or sometimes we go, I'm going to make it a brilliant thing. So to get to that place, we need this space to think. And again, brilliant book, Nancy Kline, Time to Think. Thinking for yourself is still a radical act. I love that quote because actually, do we really think? Like really good thinking, not just surface thinking, not just on default and pilot. How often do we actually get to the next level of thinking? Like, what am I actually doing? How intentional am I being? So that is what the chapter of creating time to think was all about. How do you really, not just in this moment of change, but really, really own time to think? And that kind of leads us to this looking after yourself. Because when you're pausing and you're creating time to think, you've got to ask yourself, what do I need right now? And I think a lot of pausing, of course, it's about this creating good time to think, but sometimes it's just acknowledging what you need to look after yourself.
These are extremely thick wrappers, if you
And whatever that might look like. So it's sitting with that question of what do I need right now? What do I really need? And the final kind of bit I want to place in your mind, which I found hugely powerful, was this incredible book by Tricia Hersey, founder of the NAB Ministry, which I love. Rest is resistance. Now, like, just sit with that. You might have read the book, which is incredibly powerful, but it's this idea of actually rest is a rebellion because we're so programmed to not want to pause. Stopping is a bad thing. We're so programmed deep, deep in culture, but we find it really hard. Trisha writes through the lens of Black culture, through some of her slavery history and storytelling that she tells from a lived experience point of view through her family, but also she looks at it from a modern day point of view of where we are right now, across cultures, across all kinds of ways of working. It's a really powerful way of us thinking about, hang on a minute, we're almost pre-programmed to not rest, which I find really interesting. So, this idea we're sitting with tonight, what we want to think about is this pause. We want to access a different kind of intention, a different kind of thinking. It's not just about, stopping. It's more purposeful. How are you pausing? What does pausing mean to you? Maybe you're really good at it. You really understand it. What are you finding and discovering as you are exploring pause as you read through the chapter? And sitting with what you need right now. So the practice of pause isn't just like we've done it and then we move on. We bring it in throughout the whole of the experience and probably now throughout the whole of life. We have to do pausing better and build it into everyday existence. Instead of just running and rushing to the next, we be a bit more intentional with pause. So that is our first idea we're exploring. The first step is pause.